just give like I'll give a quick introduction to myself. So I'm Bob Svercl. So I I just love learning about the world around me. I'm originally from Arlington, Virginia. That's right across the river from DC. Um, Grew up there, learned to bike, got into exploring the world around me, especially on my bike, because there's just so many places that I could take me. I'll tell like a quick little story that uh, it's kind of how I got interested in history. The neighborhood where I grew up, I found out that there was this column that was placed at the intersection of two streams. And I was always, curious about it. So I went and looked at it. And it was placed there by the Daughters of the American Revolution. They've been involved in a lot of projects to preserve history, kind of put up monuments and help protect them. So I found out that that was a spot where a tree once stood that George Washington, when he was granted land by Lord Fairfax, he was surveying his land. By the way, George Washington's first job was a surveyor. So he was surveying his land, used a tree that was in that particular spot as kind of like a beacon. Well, not a beacon, but you know, he kind of marked it on his map so it had some significance. And so after the tree finally died or was cut down, I found out that they preserved a piece of the tree trunk in a local library that was like just up the hill from this. And, all of this is maybe like a 2 or 3 minute bike ride from my house that I grew up, in my neighborhood. So just finding out that that kind of history was right there, and it was right off a major bike trail that I probably passed by a million times. And I was just so interested in that, I started looking at other stuff that I could get into. So, fast forward, I now live in Seattle, and I've been living in the area for about 4.5 years. And I am also a certified ride leader for Cascade Bicycle Club. So I lead a lot of bike rides. And I basically just love taking people and showing them things. So I give tours all the time. Even a friend of a friend reached out and said they were visiting in Seattle. So, there's so much to share. There's so many cool little things, cool little stories. So my goal for this is to basically, it's same kind of setup as like a bike ride. My goal for this is to help all of you that are watching and listening kind of develop a better understanding of the region's history as we navigate its waters. Just those little things that when you're riding in Lake Union, you'll see a certain building and be like, oh, that's why this is set up the way it is. This is why, this changed. And it's really helpful to know that context. So, and sometimes there's just cool little stories and you're just like, I want to go and, check that weird thing out again. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and jump into it. So, thank you for, coming to my virtual history paddle. So I will show you the, yeah. Okay, so here's the route that we're basically going to be taking. It's almost entirely on water. There is a section in Renton that is a historical waterway that is now a land route. And we'll learn about why that is. And then the blue dots are kind of just marking off certain things that I'll probably talk about. And we're going to go clockwise. So we'll basically make our way through to Lake Union, to Lake Washington, south to Renton, and then come up or go down the Duwamish River and then come out into the Salish Sea. So that's our kind of setup. So to just kind of give a little bit of an introduction. So we're in the area that has been it's been settled, it's been lived in by the Duwamish tribe, other coast Salish peoples. They've been living in this region for thousands of years. So the photo that I have here, the figure that's on the left side, that is a Salish tradition. Basically, it's kind of like a welcoming figure. And so the Coast Salish tribes would basically place something like this at the entrance to their village. And that's kind of their way of saying, hey, you're welcome here. So the Duwamish people, they spoke a language that we called Lushootseed. And another language that was used in this area was called Chinook jargon. Now, Chinook jargon, it was a trade language, and it was used all throughout the Pacific Northwest and as far north as Alaska. And one thing that you should know is the Duwamish people, they have been forced out of where they grew up, which is all the greater Seattle area. So there were like three kind of major events that caused that. So you had the Treaty of Point Elliott in 1855. And Point Elliott is basically Mukilteo. And that was kind of like an agreement. We'll go into more details with that later on this tour. But they were basically, the Indian tribes were forced to move to reservations. And for the Duwamish, they were supposed to have moved to a reservation on Port Madison. But not all the Duwamish wanted to leave their ancestral lands. Then you go to 1865, where the city of Seattle passed an ordinance that banned indigenous people from residing in the city. So then they were pushed out of the city. And then the next year, in 1866, there was an attempt to create a reservation for the Duwamish, and that was canceled. It was denied, basically. And I'll go into more detail on that. So, obviously the Duwamish tribe that we have, our city is named for a Chief South, Chief, which we now know as Seattle. So I'll just point out a few things that you can do if you want to kind of correct these wrongs and whatnot. One thing you can do is contribute to the Real Rent Duwamish. That basically funds the Duwamish Tribal Services. And the Duwamish Tribal Services, they were incorporated in 1983, and their mission is to promote the cultural, social, political, and economic survival of Seattle's first people, the Duwamish tribe, to revitalize and preserve Duwamish culture, and to share Duwamish history and culture with all people. Another thing you can do is you can visit the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center. They have various events going on, especially, like this time of year, there's usually various gift fairs. They have a gift shop. They usually have a recurring, like some sort of exhibit in their longhouse. I went there 2 months ago to check it out, and I believe they have a new exhibit since then. So I recommend going in and checking that out. And then you can also learn about, and this is relatively new, kind of started up this year. It's called the Coast Salish History Project. So that kind of it's a little more Canadian based. but it is looking, they're basically trying to gather writers and historians and people that can contribute to helping to preserve and remember the history. So the photo here is a Salish woman who is, weaving a basket. And then the Duwamish people, you'll see a lot of the Coast Salish peoples, kind of like their names end in an Amish or Ish. And that basically is Absh, is how it's kind of more pronounced. And that basically means people. So in the case of the Duwamish, the Du means inside. So they are the people of the inside. And then I kind of have that, that's a photo of Chief Seattle. And then that's how Duwamish is written in the Lushootseed language. All right, so I'm going to go to our first part. All right, so our first section is Schuylkill to Fremont. So this area was originally settled by the, Schuylkill tribe. They're kind of a band of the Duwamish tribe. Schuylkill means to thread a needle, and that's kind of like it was like how you rowed a canoe up from Salmon Bay, that it got pretty tight. So, they basically lived around the Ballard area. There used to be up to 1,800 Schuylkill people, but over time, most were removed to reservations, and then the final 20 that were living around there were moved to reservations so that they could build the Ballard locks. So I'll give a little bit about, this is a photo of Quelchtid. So he's better known as Salmon Bay Charlie. He lived on the southwest shore of Salmon Bay, basically around the foot of Sheridan Street in Magnolia. He was one of the most well-known Duwamish people. And so after his wife, Madeline, died, he and the remaining Schuylkill residents, again, were removed to a reservation so that they could build the Ballard locks. And his house here, which is shown, and that is his canoe, sitting in Salmon Bay. His house was burned after he was removed. And this was a practice done by friends and relatives to burn the homes of the dead in order to ritually separate them from the earth. And so one of the people that also lived, in the Schuylkill tribe, this is a photo of the niece of Chief Seattle. All right, and then I'll move on to Ballard itself. So, this is the Ballard's old city hall in its heyday. The story of Ballard kind of starts with 1852, Ira Wilcox Utter. He purchased his homestead claim, Ballard area. It didn't really grow much, so he sold part of it to Judge Thomas Burke. And so, Judge Thomas Burke's known for partnering with Daniel Gilman and others. They created the Seattle Lakeshore and Eastern Railway. And the area around Salmon Bay was called Gilman Park. So now I have to talk about William Rankin Ballard. So basically, he had formed a partnership with Judge Thomas Burke and others. But the partnership dissolved, and they kind of divided the they divided the land amongst themselves, but no one wanted to take the Gilman Park area. So they ended up having a coin toss, and he lost. So he was given the land that was Gilman Park. But it actually grew. So when it incorporated in 1890, he named it after himself. And so it became the city of Ballard. So looking at historic Ballard, this is a view looking down Ballard Avenue. And this is from 1905. I have my little cheat sheet. So that's 1905 looking down Ballard Avenue. So Seattle area, our climate is very similar to that of like Scandinavia. So a lot of immigrants moved here from the various Scandinavian countries. They basically moved here. A lot of their jobs were farmers, fishermen, mariners, and loggers. And at one point, Ballard became known as the shingle capital of the world. And so this is a photo from 1924 of a shingle mill in Ballard. So the thing is, Ballard was growing as its own city, but it was having trouble keeping up its municipal services. So stuff like, making sure everyone had water and stuff like that to keep up with the population growth. So they eventually voted in November 1906 to annex into the city of Seattle. They officially became part of Seattle on May 29th, 1907. So now we'll get to the Ballard locks, are more officially known as the Hiram M. Chittenden locks. So these locks, they carry more boat traffic than any other lock in the United States. So planning for this started with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 1891. That's when they were first looking to do this. And this is just a photo of one of their diagrams of their plans. So it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can see, and they have each of these little sections that have numbers. There are like larger maps that you can go and look up, and you can see the more details of each section of this Lake Washington Ship Canal they were looking at building, and the locks were a part of that. So they brought in Major Hiram M. Chittenden. This is in 1911. So at the time, he's a leading historian of the American West. He was also a conservationist. He was a West Point graduate, and he served as the Seattle District Engineer for the Army Corps of Engineers from 1906 to 1908.
Wow.
So over the course of time, as they were, this is a photo of them building the locks from 1913. While they were building the locks, they basically turned Salmon Bay from a saltwater bay to a freshwater bay as a result of everything. This is another photo. This one's from 1915 of them building the locks. And then this is a photo. It was not very well defined, but it's between 1916 and 1940. And so the first ship went through the locks on August 3rd, 1916. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my screen share. Is everyone still able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, if you're having trouble, sometimes it helps to stop screen sharing and restart it, I've noticed.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly try that again. Sorry about that. I'm definitely having some trouble here with my screen share. So let's see if, oh, that would be why. Photo. my Photos app shut down, so that's why. So I'm gonna kind of skip a little bit when we get started up again, so I can get back on track here.
Bob, this is Anna. I just went on camera. I just want to tell you this is really interesting. It's really great. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we're rolling again. Okay, so then these are just some photos of the locks in action, I guess. And again, these are the most these are the busiest locks in the country. So next is Fisherman's Terminal. So this is just a photo from the Ballard Bridge. Just you can kind of see the whole thing there. So Fisherman's Terminal story there goes, and this is a photo from 1950. So you know, even this is a little bit out of date. So it starts out with the Port of Seattle. It was founded in 1911. The big issue was that fishing vessels didn't have a home port on Puget Sound for them for off-season moorage. So the Port of Seattle was founded, you know, and they worked to get the Fisherman's Terminal built. So it was dedicated on January 10th, 1914. So you can kind of see this is like a newspaper photo, or like from a newspaper, basically showing like the opening day. So they have an interesting setup. So they're at first they could only hold about like 200 vessels. Now they're currently at 1,000. And they have a shared moorage policy. And it gives fishing vessels priority over pleasure boats at the slips. So this is a photo from 1949. This is at Fisherman's Terminal. And it's basically, you know, just someone repairing a fishing net as a, you know, group of kids are just like, you know, awestruck watching everything happen. And then this is just a panorama from the Fisherman's Terminal, from like that main building. And then this sculpture, this is basically, it's a bronze and concrete sculpture designed by Ronald Petty, dedicated in October 1988. And it commemorates Seattle fishermen who have died since 1900. All right, so next up, we are going to Fremont, but this old map, you can see there was an issue they came to when they were trying to build the Lake Washington Ship Canal, and that's getting to Fremont. You didn't have much room because there was a little stream called Ross Creek. So basically, Lake Union flowed out, Lake Union drained through Ross Creek into Salmon Bay. So what they did is they contracted the Lake Washington Improvement Company in 1883. So they needed to dig it out. So what they did is they hired Chinese laborers, and this is through the Hua Chung Company. They were based out of Chinatown. So of course, at this time, we had the Chinese Exclusion Act. So and Chinese and many other Asian people were not allowed to even be citizens of the United States. So companies like the Hua-Chung company were able to basically, contract out and find, workers. So the Lake Washington Improvement Company worked with them to basically, and this is them digging out Ross Creek to turn it into the Fremont Cut. So this is 1906. And then this is also 1906, just showing the progress. And then obviously this is what we have now. The Fremont Cut itself, it's 100 feet wide, it's 30 feet deep. So when they first built it, they kind of put a little wooden dam with a spillway at the east end of the Fremont Cut until the rest of the canal was built. So next, at the end of the Fremont Cut, is the Fremont Bridge. So what we're looking at right now, this is the third iteration of Fremont Bridge. So they had two others. The first was a low trestle bridge that was built in 1891, and that's not going to do with ships. So there was a higher trestle bridge that was built in 1911, and then the current one, and this is almost from the same spot as the current photo that I showed. And so this is the Fremont Bridge being constructed. So it's and this is when it was completed. This is a photo from 1917. So you can just see they had it set up with like the streetcar tracks and everything. And so it opened on June 15th, 1970. Oh, this is opening day. I'm sorry. This photo is from they first opened the bridge. And it's a double leaf bascule bridge. So this is opening day, and then this is kind of, modern day. So one notable thing about the Fremont Bridge is that it is the, as long as it lets me play it. There we go. It is the most frequently opened bridge in the United States, at an average of 35 times per day. Now, the thing with that is that's 35 times per day on average, and it actually goes down in the winter, and it's more frequent than 35 during the summer. So I don't know why I'm saying it opens more than any other bridge, but maybe that'll come up later. Wink, wink. So that is the end of that section. And the next part is Lake Union. So we're going to do Lake Union to Montlake. So with Lake Union, the Duwamish people called it Ha'achu, and it's basically the Lachute seed term for small lake. And I kind of showed some of the Lachute seed alphabet. And then you can kind of see a map that sort of shows the regional dialects and like the tribes that use each language in that little map there. In Chinook jargon, it was known as Tennis Chuck, which basically means small water. And again, you can download like a copy of the Pocket Dictionary of the Chinook jargon, which is, really, really cool kind of stuff. But the person who's the reason why we have the current name is pictured here. This is pioneer Thomas Mercer. So what he did is in 1854, he basically made the prediction, or he's credited with it, for saying that canals would someday join Lake Washington and Puget Sound in a union of waters. And so this is kind of like the Burke Museum has a water lines project that looks at historic, basically the historic geography and layout. So obviously this is not a satellite photo, but so I modified it a bit So this is just a small little portion of it. So this is kind of to show the difference. This is what it looked like, or minus any sort of residences in 1820, and then compare that to 2020. So 200 years, you can just see how much has changed. And I'll go and do it one more time. Pay attention, like Union Bay here. Even stuff like and there's Ross Creek. You can see. Just pay attention to where the edge of the lake is. And you can see it's the lake lowered. So we'll move on to Gasworks Park. So the first thing you're probably going to notice when you paddle into Lake Union are these, gorgeous old industrial towers. So this is Gasworks Park. So the area used to be it was a busy gasification plant. Usually the air was full of smoke from coal and tar fires, so you wouldn't really want to be there. So it starts with the Seattle Gas Light Company, started in 1873 by a consortium of people, including, and remember the names, Arthur Denny and Dexter Horton. So they wanted a power plant that created synthetic gas using steam and superheated coal in coke ovens, but they required lots of fresh water. So they chose a site called Browns Point at the north end of Lake Union. So this is a photo from 1906 of the first plant being built. So then this is the first plant, and I'll explain why I'm saying first plant. So what they did is, so it created illuminating gas, which is gas that was used for lighting, and that's why it's the Seattle Gas Light Company. Later, they created gas for cooking, heating homes, and heating water. So most of these buildings aren't there anymore, except for the pump house. So the pump house, and then those, if you've been in Gasworks Park, you've probably seen those old, like the, train rails. There's the kind of like elevated thing. So that would bring coal cars in. They had conveyor belts that would take it to the coke ovens. But that pump house, which is kind of now more, I think it's called a playhouse now. It's all brightly covered and everything. So that would pump out the gas through pipes that went as far as Kent. And it was Seattle's biggest, power source of power. So it was reconstructed in 1937 after a new gasification method was invented, which basically created gas from petroleum. And that's where you see these more these towers that are still there. So these are natural gas generator towers with attendant processing towers. So this is a photo from 1961. So this is after, so the plant shut down in 1956 after the Trans Mountain gas pipeline from Canada was completed. So after they, shut down, it was kind of like, okay, what do they do with the site? And the effort to turn it into a park was spearheaded by a Seattle council member named Myrtle Edwards. She was the one who kind of pushed for it. So this is kind of also another photo of like some of the buildings starting to be taken down. So they hired Richard Haig. So that's him on the right here. And this is him talking with Seattle Mayor Wes Ullman. And so Richard Haig, they hired him in 1970. He was a landscape architect with Richard Haig Associates to basically turn the site into a park. So they used the bioremediation method to clean the soil. This is kind of like during cleanup. So there's still, there's a lot going on. and they had a lot of toxic material they had to deal with. So they used bioremediation methods. You see this little hill over here? So they took a lot of toxic materials, gathered it into a large pile, covered it in 18 inches of hand-picked clay, and that's Kite Hill. So that big tall hill, that's, you know, sitting on a whole bunch of toxic materials. This is Gasworks Park on opening day. So because Myrtle Edwards was the person who, you know, she spearheaded the effort to turn Newnan Park, she died in a car crash before it opened. So they decided to name the park after her initially. So this was Myrtle Edwards Park, but her family didn't like that because they kept some of the industrial buildings and stuff. So they renamed it to Gasworks Park, and they instead took Elliott Bay Park and renamed it Myrtle Edwards Park. So that's kind of like why the naming's like that. So another thing you should know is that you can't now, not in this first picture where people didn't know any better, you cannot swim or dock your boat at Gasworks Park because the lake sediment around the edge is still too toxic. So now we're gonna basically.
Now you tell us.
Oh yeah, well it's, you know, it's like I grew up. We had a neighborhood creek that was near my house, and we would swim in the creek, and we found out, oh, there was like a company that was dumping stuff into the stream. So, you know, I think that glowing in the dark at night is very useful. So, you know, but yeah. So, you know, obviously there's still yet you know, stuff left to do, but that was like you know, they got a lot of awards for at least the attempt of the bioremediation. So we're gonna head south to the south end of the lake, and I don't know if it's moored there now. Sometimes it kind of moves around a little bit, but this is the Virginia 5. And yes, of course, I went to it because you know, it says Virginia on it, and I'm a Virginia boy. So this is a steamship that was built in 1921, 1922, and it's the last remaining vessel in what was known as Puget Sound's Mosquito Fleet. So it basically, the Mosquito Fleet gets its name. Oh yeah, and this is an old photo of the Virginia 5. So the Mosquito Fleet gets its name from the hundreds of steamships that used to operate around Puget Sound from the 1850s through the 1930s. And they carried people, goods, you know, and they basically, here's like a map that shows Seattle here's in the most densely you know, populated spot. And you can just see how all these different, you know, routes basically go all over Puget Sound. So they were said to resemble a swarm of mosquitoes. And so this is the SS Tacoma, the Lincoln of Kirkland. Oh, and you should realize that many of the routes used by the Mosquito Fleet are now served by Washington State Ferries. So, you know, you can kind of see here, they've already got the like the vehicle kind of bay there. And then this is the SS Beaver. All right, so we'll move on to the Center for Wooden Boats. It's also at the, you know, South Lake Union area. I'd strongly recommend checking this place out. This is the new building that opened in 2019. So the Center for Wooden Boats, this is the original building, which they still use. So the Center for Wooden Boats was founded by Dick Wagner in 1976. And it's been involved in education on boat building and maintenance since the 1970s. And their mission, this is inside, this is kind of like their big work room, and you can go up to the second floor and look down and kind of see everyone building everything. The missions to promote Northwest maritime heritage through education, interpretation, and hands-on experience in building, maintaining, and using historic small craft. All right, so continuing on, you're going to see this power plant looking building. This is the Lake Union Hydroelectric Plant Powerhouse. Here's kind of a photo of one of the, it was built in 3 phases from 1914 to 1921. So you can see this phase, they only had 4 smokestacks. And this is a photo of the full one when it was completed. So it had 7, remember 7. And it had 7 smokestacks and 14 boilers. And this is, you know, a photo from inside. It generated 30,000 kilowatts of power. It was decommissioned in 1987, sold to private companies. So the current one, you can see there's 6 smokestacks. So the thing is, they took down the original smokestacks, but there was a requirement that they put something up that looked like smokestacks. So these are completely just there, you know, just so it would, you know, basically check that box for preservation. So those don't actually do anything. Yeah. But oh, and another thing to know is that it kind of started with this little building. You can see the City Light and Power. That was built before the bigger one. And then this is just a thing that's on the side of the building. You see City Light Plant number 3, and then it says 1920. All right, and so really close by, you can, it's hard to see here, but you have the Lake Union Dry Dock Company. So it's the Lake Union Dry Dock and Machine Works. So this opened in 1919, and it's one of the oldest shipyards in the nation. So, you know, it built ships, it repaired them. This is a minesweeper it built during World War II. One of the products they were known for was the Lake Union Dreamboat. So basically, this was their attempt at the Ford Model T. They basically they designed this boat so that it would be cheap to manufacture and affordable. And so you can kind of see they have a really distinct design, like especially at the, you know, so I haven't been able to see one of these in real life, but I think it'd be really cool. But yeah, so the currently the Lake Union Dry Dock, it's not really involved in building boats anymore, but they still do repair services, and they do everything from tugboats to Coast Guard ships, large yachts, even Washington State ferries. They'll take them here to fix. All right, so we're getting to the edge of this is Portage Bay on a very, very nice day. So we're getting to the Montlake Cut now. The lakes were separate, and Lake Union, Lake Washington separate until the 19th century. Generations of Indians and, you know, the Salish people used this spot because it was the shortest spot in order to get between the lakes, that they'd have to portage their boats to get between the lakes. So this, along with the discovery of coal in places like southeast of Lake Washington and like around Issaquah and Lake Sammamish, you know, industry was looking to make it a little bit easier to get to the Seattle port, because like I'll use an example. The coal that was mined at Newcastle, and this is like, you know, between Bellevue and Renton, it would take them, if they tried to do it by boat, they would have to go on Lake Washington and then go down the Black and Duwamish rivers to Elliott Bay. And that would take about a week. And that would just, you know, and they couldn't take the large amounts that they wanted to. So what they started to do was they would take a barge, take it across Lake Washington and come here to this isthmus. And they actually built a little tram line across it, get to Portage Bay, put it on another barge, go on the barge down to the south end, and that's where a railroad would take it to the Seattle waterfront. And that was Seattle's first railroad, which was, ooh, do I have the name of it there? It was the Seattle Coal and something else company. But yeah, they were Seattle's first railroad. So again, they wanted to make it so it'd be easier to get ships through. So they built first a small ditch that was just wide enough to float logs and very small boats through. And this was, so that was okay, but they still wanted, something bigger. So they went to build the Montlake Cut. So you'll kind of, if you look at the path of State Road 520 and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration building that's kind of down there, they were able to use that land because it was kind of condemned because it was already the Montlake Ditch. So with the Montlake Cut, it's constructed a little bit farther north of the Montlake Ditch, as you can see in the photo. So this is while they were constructing the Montlake Cut, and then this is a kind of a before and after of when they basically blew up the last dam that was separating Lake Union from Lake Washington. So this is kind of, and I tried to get these two pictures to line up as best as I could. So this is where it's starting to, you see where the people are standing right there. I assume they moved out of the way because there wasn't really anything left there. But yeah, so August 26, 1916, the Montlake Cut was completed, and for 3 straight months, water flowed from Lake Washington into Lake Union. They officially opened it to the public on July 4th, 1917, and this caused Lake Washington to drop by about 9 feet.
Wow.
So this is just kind of what used to be there around 1900, and then this is what it looks like now. So you can see right there, and then again, look at how much land, hundreds of acres of land was basically created with them doing this. So we'll go through the Montlake Cut under Montlake Bridge, and now we've reached Lake Washington. So I will try to hurry up a little because I am running over time. So we have part 4 here. This is Lake Washington. So the thing with Lake Washington, it's a ribbon lake. That just means it was kind of like carved out. It's almost like finger shaped. It was created by glaciers. The one that kind of carved out, Lake Washington, and then how we have the Kent, Auburn, that big valley. This is all like the Cordilleran ice sheet. This is covered much of the Pacific Northwest during the glacial periods of the last 2.7 million years. Here's just another photo. So, this was all where we all are was all under, miles of ice, just carving everything out. And you can already see here how kind of the reason why we had the Olympic Peninsula is that it didn't get carved away. So Lake Washington in Lachute Seed, it was known as the people living around Lake Washington were known as the Hachuapsh. And that's basically lake people or people of the lake. And this is just this is like, I took this from a website that kind of went down, but each of these numbered little, they're little mini longhouses. Each one's a location of a Duwamish or Coast Salish village. So you can just see how there's so many around Lake Washington. And then you can see over here on the left, that was the Schuylkill village. So another thing you should know when you are going on Lake Washington is that there are underwater forests. So this picture, or this map of Lake Washington, the yellow areas are areas where basically what happened is there was a major earthquake. It was magnitude 7.5. This occurred around 900 CE. And basically there are landslides that happened. So these forests, they got submerged. And this is just like a screenshot of some photos of some divers took. And they're just, there's no light. That's actually a light from another diver. And it was just far enough deep enough that light doesn't reach it. And it's just this forest, and they have them in 3 areas around the lake. And so the tree, the trunk and branches are mostly preserved, but like the leaves and other stuff did not make it. But yeah, that stuff is there. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I won't get into. Other, that's like coal cars.
One of them is St. Edward's Park, isn't it?
What's that?
One of them is that St. Edward's Park? No, it's more.
Oh,
south.
yeah, it's near it. It's near it. So I think it's like a little bit farther south of it, but that is one of them that you can see here. Oh, whoops! I will try and zoom in a little. But yeah, and it's kind of cool. It's like right across the way from Seward Park. You wouldn't even know there's, and this is something that people knew about, like the settlers knew about this, especially when they lowered the lake by 9 feet, because it was a hazard for them putting their anchors down, and you don't want to suddenly have something for your boat to hit. So, so one of the things that Lake Washington had were steamboats. They had kind of their own ferry system. So one group was called the Anderson Steamboat Company. I also wanted to kind of show this photo because it's kind of cool, because this is from 1906 at their ticket office. They were based out of like Leshigh Park. But sorry, zoomed out when I wanted to zoom in. So you can see this person sitting right here. That's John Muir, noted naturalist, and like we've been to like San Francisco, the Muir Woods, who was involved in helping to preserve like a lot of like the national parks and stuff like that. So kind of cool. Just a random thing. It was in that photo. But yeah, so this is like their ticket office. This is also at Leshigh Park, and it's kind of hard to see in the photo. You can see there are signs. There's Mercer Island Ferry, Medina Ferry, and then I forgot what the other one was, but yeah. So this is like this is the steamboat Fortuna, and yeah, they basically it served Lake Washington. This is a little this is a brochure that they had. It kind of has a timetable, and you can see some of their major routes. So they would run from Leshigh Park. They had a terminal, and they also had one at the end of Madison Street at Madison Park. And so you can see some of the routes. We go to like Juanita, Kirkland, Medina, and then they have this one. They actually had, it would do a loop around Mercer Island and just kind of hit up a bunch of spots on it. And it was kind of cool that they actually advertise, and this is their timetable. But over here on the left, they actually say the lake is reached by streetcar on Yesler Way from Occidental Avenue direct to Leshigh Park. And so they're basically saying, hey, you can get it to us from the streetcars. And so, you know, it's just kind of cool seeing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they had, this is like South Kirkland, I want to say. This was their shipyard, and it was, what is the name of that place? I think it's called Houghton or Houghton. I don't know how to pronounce it. Houghton. But this is a photo from 1933. So they had a shipyard there for their ferries. So another thing we'll do is we will encounter a couple of the longest floating bridges in the world. So obviously, on this route, we went under the Governor Albert D. Rossellini Evergreen Point Bridge. That's the longest in the world. The second longest is the one that carries I-90 East across Lake Washington. And then we also have in the area at the Hood Canal, that's the Hood Canal Bridge, the third longest. The only one on this list that isn't in the US, or much less the Pacific Northwest, is the Demerara Harbor Bridge in Guyana in South America. And then the Homer M. Hadley Memorial Bridge carries I-90 West, the I-90 Trail, and then also it's the first floating bridge in the world to ever carry a light rail system. And if you're wondering why there's a difference between the I-90 East and the I-90 West ones, is because they measure the floating bridges by where it actually is floating. So kind of where it hits the water. So the Homer M. Hadley Memorial Bridge stretches farther out, supported by, you know, with supports before it finally floats.
Mm.
All right, and now we will move on. We will continue going south, and we will hit Renton and the Black and Duwamish rivers. So this is a photo of so this part of the ride of the tour doesn't exist anymore. This is a photo of the Black River when it was still flowing like normal. This is from 1898. And so basically, I'm gonna tell you what happened. So quick little thing, the left side of the map is kind of a zoomed in version. And then you can see on the right side that, I'll remove that. The red box basically shows you where it's zoomed in. So kind of before 1906, there were a whole bunch of rivers that flowed together. The interesting thing is that the Lake Washington used to flow out into the Black River, and then the Cedar River would join it. They would flow together into the White River, which was the combination of white and green. And then the Black and White would join to form the Duwamish, and it would flow into Elliott Bay. So that's what it used to do. So this zoomed up version is, this is out near Puyallup and Auburn. So the White River, that originates from Tahoma, Mount Rainier, on Emmons Glacier. And that used to flow all the way into Elliott Bay. So it would kind of split its flow a little bit, and it would run and join the green, and then some of it would still continue as the Stuck River, and that would go out into the Puyallup and then Tacoma. So this is how it was before 1906. So what happened is there was a basically a log jam that created a it basically diverted the White River. So there's more to the story because there's a whole story about King County farmers and Pierce County farmers feuding. It involves lawsuits. It involves people building their own dams. It involves people using their own dynamite to get rid of such dams. But in the end, they ended up reaching an agreement. King County paid Pierce County some sort of stipend or fee, because the thing is, the White River, where it flows, it would flood. So it was worth it to King County to not have it flow, farther north. And you can actually go to, I think it's called Game Farm Park in Auburn, I believe. And I've actually been, you can see the physical concrete wall. That is the permanent barrier. After that happened, it was only the Green River flowing north to meet the Black. So now we're going to look around. This is the Renton and Tukwila. So you can see the Lake Washington drained to the south, and then the Cedar would join it, and then they would both flow to join the Green to start the Duwamish River. So after a major flood in 1911, Renton built a canal on the Cedar River to divert most of it to go directly into Lake Washington. Now you still had it flowing out into the Black River, but that helped with some of the flooding. And I'll do this again. So pay attention to the lakeshore. This is getting to when the Lake Washington Ship Canal was completed. Again, the Lake Washington dropped by about 9 feet. So you can see the lakeshore starting out. But you can also notice that the source of the Black River is cut off because it dropped too low. So what happened is this caused the Black River to dry up. And now there's kind of this only a little spot, this kind of end. There's Springbrook Creek that kind of goes into it. But yeah, the rest of this is land now. So you can kind of see, this is just like a quick little comparison of before and then after the various dams and whatnot. So one thing you should know is that a lot of the Duwamish people, after they had been kicked out of Seattle or forced to move to reservations, a lot of them had settled along the Black River, and this is more their ancestral homes. So what happened is when the Black River dried up, I have a quote from, this is Joseph Moses. This is the brother of Henry Moses. This is a quote from him because their house was on the Black River and they were Duwamish people. They said, "That was quite a day for the white people, at least. The waters just went down, down until our landing and canoes stood dry, and there was no Black River at all." So this is kind of like a photo, kind of showing that, these were houses. They're, and if you're wondering, they're the Joseph Moses and Henry Moses, their house, it was basically on the west end across the athletic field from Renton High School. So if you want an idea of like where that was in the city, and that was, river used to flow right by there. And it no longer does. So one of the things that was kind of created as a result of part of the Black River drying up, this is the Black River Riparian Forest and Wetland Preserve. So this is, there's a huge colony of great blue herons. They're called coastal herons. And there's about 100 that nest here. And they've been here since like 1986. And then that's just a photo someone else took. I wish I had the skill to get a bird in motion like that, of a coastal heron. So continuing on the Black River, now we actually have water that we're back on. So we're getting here to, you'll recognize this bridge. This is in Tukwila. This is Fort Dent Park, Starfire. This is the look from the Black River as you get to, and this is just kind of where we were. And this is where the Duwamish River starts. So if you're standing on the bridge, the Green River is behind you. the Black River is this little one coming in from the side, and then flowing forward, and then north is the Duwamish River. So let's see. I'm just going to jump to. So what was also here was the Duwamish village of Svercl, which basically means meeting of two rivers. So as I said before, in 1980 in 1855, they had the Treaty of Point Elliott that basically had all of the tribes moved to reservations. Then the city of Seattle banned Duwamish people and other indigenous people from living in the city. So what happened is in 1866, United States Indian agent Thomas Page, so he recommended to the government that they establish a reservation for the Duwamish along the Black River. But, okay, I did have some photos. This is some of the Treaty of Point Elliott. These are just like a few pages from it. You can see just some of the parts of it. I'll just quickly zoom in, and you'll notice that this is a federal treaty. The first signature was Isaac I. Stevens. He was the governor of Washington Territory, but the very first tribal signature is Chief Seattle. So you can see here, this is an official federal document that has the Duwamish name on it. And then there's other like Duwamish people that signed it. And then it was then signed eventually by President James Buchanan. So what happened is Thomas Page recommended they build a reservation for the Duwamish, and then a group of about 156 white settlers in the area wrote a letter, and they sent it. You can kind of see this is a blurry screenshot of it. They sent it to Arthur Denny, who was the delegate to Congress from Washington Territory. And they basically, and Arthur Denny himself actually is the first signature. And they basically asked, please don't give them a reservation. And well, they didn't. So just a quick follow-up to this. On June 18th, 1988, 72 descendants of these Washington settlers who wrote this letter, they formally apologized, and they petitioned the Bureau of Indian Affairs in support of giving federal recognition to the Duwamish. So this was just kind of like a, their ancestors did this like 100 or 120 years before, they were there. But so we're going to continue on the Duwamish River. This is near the, random news. This was actually in the news today that a truck was driving across this bridge. This is near the Tukwila Community Center. It actually pulled down. It had like some like ladder or something. It was sticking up too far, and it hit one of these metal girders and kind of pulled it. So they had the whole bridge shut down. So if you happen to know any Tukwila news, I lived in Tukwila for 4 years before finally moving to Seattle. So I'm very familiar with this bridge. Yeah, so that was in the news today. So we're going to go to the Duwamish Hill Preserve. That's just a little bit farther down the river. So this is a cultural preserve. It's a 10.5 acre parcel. It's historical, cultural, and ecologically significant land. So the thing is, this, it doesn't look like much. It's like big hill. It's a glacial remnant. It's actually older than Tahoma itself, the Mount Rainier. So the thing is, the developer, the owner of the land was going to basically flatten it and turn it into more industrial parking. You can't see in this photo, but basically on all sides of our other like industrial parking with industrial vehicles and stuff. So basically a partnership was formed in 2001 between, well, it was called Cascade Land Conservancy at the time. It's now known as Forterra. They formed a partnership with the city of Tukwila and then the citizen group Friends of the Hill. They acquired the land from the developer. This is a photo of the volunteers who went in to remove invasive weeds, plant native, plants and stuff. And they were able to get the preserve open in September 2010. So you kind of notice these little, so there's the industrial parking you can see around there. You can kind of see these little, they're like ovals. So this is as part of it, they were able to create the Puget Sound Salish Cultural Garden. Now, the idea behind this is to basically have a place for the Duwamish people and other Coast Salish people to grow the plants and other things they used to grow, traditionally, and give them the opportunity to be able to gather them. And I love going there because it has all these little signs, and then like in the corner, you can kind of see it. It gives you the Lachute seed name for various things. So this is really cool. You have something like the camas, the common camas, which is, and you can see some of these are in bloom right now. Side note, the Salish people would wait for the camas to bloom before harvesting them, because the only way to be able to tell between the camas that has that grows like the bluish purple flower and then the white flowers is the ones that grow the white flowers are very poisonous. So the only time of year you can tell which one's poison and which one's not is when they're in bloom. And then it has, various little like gathering areas for the Coast Salish people. And I love this because this is basically a gathering calendar, and it kind of tells you, some of the stuff that are in season or ready to be harvested. So you have here the tools are ready to harvest and dry for making mats, and this is between August and September. And so stuff like that kind of really help you understand, like, oh, okay, this is what they were doing at this time of year traditionally. So we'll go just a little bit farther down the Duwamish River, and oh, my Photos app is having issues again. It is really not liking it. But yeah, so we'll go just a little bit farther down the Duwamish River, and I will get the screen share working again.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
that last garden that you were showing, that's the Salish Cultural Garden?
It's the Puget Sound Salish Cultural Garden.
Okay. And that's basically in the Tukwila area?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I was just trying to get the thing back up.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it's basically where it's like at East Marginal Way, where that crosses the Duwamish River.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's okay. You didn't need to, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that was there. Duwamish Hill Preserve. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, and if you know where this one is, like, you can see the light rail is like visible there. And okay. All right, now we're back. So just like this is probably like 200-300 feet away from the Duwamish Hill Preserve, and it's much easier to find because it's on the river, right where the light rail bridge goes overhead. This is the Duwamish Gardens Park. So this basically, it was the site of the old Duwamish Gardens truck farm. This is kind of like a Italian immigrant who lived there, would have, his truck farm, it was a gathering place for various Italian immigrant families. And Unfortunately, when they built this bridge, one of the supports is where they had to demolish the truck farm, the pre-1900 pioneer farmhouse. It was like one of the last remaining ones in the green Duwamish Valley. They demolished that in 2015. So in order to build the support for the light rail station, or the light rail itself. So Duwamish Gardens Park. So this is, just kind of, I'll just kind of do a slow pan. So what they did is they excavated 30,000 cubic yards of soil. And this little area here on the right, this is a mud flat and a marsh. And depending on the tide, you'll see that the water level will all be all the way down to like maybe out here, and then this would just be mud. So this is basically created to provide a safer spot for salmon, especially juvenile salmon, to live as they make their transition from the fresh water of the river down as they make their way into the salt water of Puget Sound. And this is a just like a little skull of wind chimes, and it's made in the style of how the Salish people would basically dry their fish, their caught fish, like little fish racks. So this is also in that Duwamish Gardens Park. So it's kind of like, I forget who asked where the other one was. This one's also really close to it. This one's probably more easy to actually see, but it's like the road that connects them is very, very, close together. So, so one of the reasons why this is important, this transition zone, you can kind of see this is highlighted in orange. This is miles 1 through 10 of the Duwamish River. And this is a transition zone where juvenile salmon adjust from freshwater to get ready for the salt water. And then Duwamish Gardens Park was dedicated in May 2017. So a lot of this stuff is pretty new. And they are currently doing construction to extend the park farther downriver. So this is the North Wind Weir. This is another interesting spot. And unfortunately, just around the river bend from here is the start of the Superfund site. So from here to the rest, getting into Elliott Bay, that part of the Duwamish River is a Superfund site. So the thing is, Duwamish River, Seattle's only river. It's also been Seattle's major industrial corridor since the 1900s. And so I've kind of combined two little pieces of the warning kind of stuff. And you can see on the left side, there's a list, and this is like Duwamish River, Elliott Bay, and just kind of showing you can't eat these fish. And if you can tell, basically the pollution from all this industrial use, the pollution gets into the water, and what it does is it settles in the mud. So any of those fish that spend most of their lives in the mud, those you cannot eat them. So that's why you can see like the crabs, the mussels, clams, and even some of the like bottom feeder like fish. It's not safe to eat them. So they, so obviously they had to create charts like these. It's more okay to eat the salmon because the salmon don't linger. They're just kind of passing through on their spawning, run. So that's why it's still okay to eat the salmon and then a few other things. So they're currently working on, it was declared a Superfund site in 2001, and parts of it aren't expected to be cleaned up until I have an estimate of like 2037. So the good news is that some of it has been cleaned up. There are parts like around Harbor Island, but still there's still a lot of work to be done. And a lot of damage was done. So, you know, they're working on that. All right, so we're going to jump to keep going downriver. We're going to get to the South Park Bridge. So this is the bridge that was built in 1931 as a double leaf basketball bridge. So the thing is, this was South Park's this was their connection to get to the rest of the city. And so the thing is, the bridge, maintenance, very prescient right now as we talk about, this and thinking about the West Seattle Bridge, where again, bridge maintenance. So what happened is they closed the bridge permanently on June 30th, 2010. Now, the thing is, they had some creative citizens. So as I show this next picture, the citizens held a wake for the bridge. So, and this is a photo from that wake of the last time they were able to cross the old South Park Bridge. So for about 4 years, there was no bridge there until the current one was opened to the public in June 2014. And the current one is a trunnion basketball bridge. So that's just a little bit of fun. And I actually know someone who attended that wake. So people keep things interesting. So continuing down the river, we get to, this is the park. This is Ha'apus Park. It's like formerly called Terminal 107 Park. So the thing is, this is across the West Marginal Way from the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center. So what happened is the Port of Seattle was going to build a terminal here, but they basically found, it was an archaeological site because they discovered something. So they had to go and investigate it. And this is called Duwamish Site Number 1, and then it's 45-KI-23. So this was 1975. And so they basically said, hey, there are Duwamish, there are old, my brain's not working right now, but basically there were historic items from the Duwamish. So they had to stop, and so that's why there's no terminal there. So the Duwamish tribe, so since they hadn't had any sort of longhouses to live in, they had no longhouses for over 100 years. So they started a project to build a longhouse in the 1990s. They worked with tribal members and the local community. There were about 36 community groups and government departments, and they were eventually able to build what is currently there. This opened, the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center opened on January 3rd, 2009. This is just a photo I took from the inside. So, I mean, it's just very beautiful inside. There's just so much gorgeous like wood carvings and whatnot, just, I strongly recommend taking a trip there. Yeah, and then this is just like a little thing they have on the wall. So you can kind of tell that the current chair, so the tribe actually changed their like government, I would say, loosely, as far as like formalization and stuff, from having like chiefs to more, they have elected chairs. And so the current chair, Svercl Hansen, she's been the chair since 1975 of the Duwamish tribe. So she was actually one of the people that when they discovered these artifacts, there's the word, when they were digging for the terminal, she was one of the people that spoke up and said, hey, wait, we need to hold off because these are important to our people. And so there were a few villages that were nearby, like that Ha'apus, which it had several longhouses and hundreds of inhabitants in the 1800s. And the thing is, you can still find shell middens Now a midden is kind of like a refuse pile. It's kind of think like if you're eating a whole bunch of pistachios, and you basically just took your pistachio and you took the shell and threw it on the ground, and then basically over time formed a big pile. So think of like that for like mussels and clams. So they found shell middens. They're still visible today. And then there's also Tualaultuaq, or Herring House. That's a little bit north of it, at the former Terminal 105 Park. And that had 4 medium-sized longhouses and a large potlatch house that was over 300 feet long. So this is kind of, we just continue down, and we are now making it to Elliott Bay. So this is the last major section. So let me just talk about the Elliott Bay really quickly. So you have here, this is a map from 1854, and this is Elliott Bay, which at times they call Duwamish Bay. Now you can see here, it looks very different than what it used to. So you can see over here on Alki, if I zoom in a lot, very, very little kind of going on. There's a mill. So just kind of retelling the story, November 1851, that's when the Denny party settled at Alki, lasted through the winter, said, I've had enough of it, and moved to a better spot across Elliott Bay the next spring. So one winter was all it took. So you can kind of see here, there's this, that's the start of Seattle. And these numbers that you're seeing, these are the depth. So what you have here, this whole kind of light gray area, these are tidal flats. So during high tide, they're underwater. They have maybe like 1 or 2 feet of water. And then at low tide, they're actually exposed. And they're just muddy and I imagine really difficult to get across. So I'll show the next map, and this is one from, I wrote down, yeah, it's 1889. So this is just 5, or not 5 years later, but this is like, so this is 1889 look. And so you can see it's still the tidal flats. You can see more has been built. There's the West Seattle Ferry, and then you can see a lot of it is being built up here. One little thing I love to point out is down here, this says brewery, and this is on the edge of Beacon Hill. So there's a particularly notable brewery that you probably all have seen that was formerly known as the Bayview Brewery, and it's what we now know as the Rainier Brewery. So that big building with the big old R, that is where it was, and the reason why it was called the Bayview Brewery is that it actually had a view of the bay. Basically, there's all this land. It's really hard to deal with, and they were trying, industry was looking to do stuff to really open it up for industrial use. So what they did is they hired, this is also like a photo of what it kind of looked like with the tidal flats, and then you can see a lot of railroads going on. And this is one more of the tidal flats. This one's from 1923. So the Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company was hired. And so this is a major shipbuilding and construction company that was established in 1898. So one of the other things this group was known for, they built the first floating bridge across Lake Washington. They built the King County Courthouse, which is still there. It's that same building. And then they built the original Husky Stadium at UW back before the more current one has been built. So what they did is, this is some of the plans that they had to basically create 2 channels. And as you can tell, this is what they currently have. And this is like another, kind of planning document that you can look at. So this is the dredging of the Duwamish River. So they basically dredged the river, they used the silt, and they combined it with soil from various regrades that the city was doing to basically make the hills less steep. And they basically dumped it into Elliott Bay. They filled the tidal flats, created the industrial area we know as SoDo. And this is a photo. This is when they were starting to build Harbor Island. So you can see just a little bit. This is like just getting going. And then this is a look at, you can see how the Duwamish River changed. So they basically, they straightened it, they deepened it. But you can tell that some of it was still, and you can even see on current maps, where if you look at the Duwamish River, you'll see little like nubs that kind of stick out. And each one of those nubs is like kind of a bend that basically got cut through. And one of the there's a series of bends that they cut through, and that's how they were able to find the land to build like Boeing Airport and that kind of stuff. So they built in 1909, the Harbor Island was completed. So it was about 350 acres big. It was the largest artificial island in the world. So it eventually got surpassed by Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay. But then in 1967, it re-expanded and then took the title again. And it had that title until 2004, when Rocco Island was created in Japan at 1,400 acres. So Harbor Island nowadays is only, it's only 407 acres about. So the one in Japan is 1,000 acres bigger. So not even close anymore. So this is a series of photos of diagrams of maps. This is from the Burke Museum, and you just basically see the top is more of like the map and satellite view, and the bottom is more of the actual makeup. So you can see the tide flat slowly being, they built railroads across it. They slowly filled it in more, and then most of that land now is all just infill. One of the problems with that is that it's also seismically unstable, and it's prone to what they call liquefaction. So during the 2001 Nisqually earthquake, of all things, a seismologist, Bob Norris, happened to be on Harbor Island. And so he actually was able to see this liquefaction in action. And it seems kind of scary because it's basically like watching ground do kind of act like a liquid, and then even have like little kind of like little splashes in a way. So yeah, so whenever you go to SoDo, that's kind of what you're looking at, or what you're standing on. So all right, so we're out in Elliott Bay, and we're getting out of Elliott Bay into what is known as the Salish Sea. So this is basically the combination of the Strait of Georgia, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and Puget Sound. So this is kind of a newer term for this area. It was originated by marine biologist Bert Weber in 1988. And then it wasn't until 2008 that the Chemainus First Nation, they proposed renaming just part of the Georgia Strait as the Salish Sea. And it wasn't until February 2010 that it was officially adopted for the whole region. And this required approval by the Geographical Names Boards and Offices of the United States, Canada, Washington State, and British Columbia. So one of the things I'd like to point out is that there are about 23 different languages spoken by the Coast Salish tribes around the Salish Sea. And so, just kind of look at our area. We are in the southern Lachute area, because you can see this little thing that's Seattle's right here. But you can see some of the other names, the other languages that are spoken. And the Salish Sea was just super important to all the Coast Salish tribes, because it was just so easy with so many waterways and islands and canals or straits, I should say, where they could trade, and there was so much to do. All right, so we're making our way around Puget Sound. We're making this is West Point Lighthouse, and this is a photo. Oh, I don't have the date for it. Oh, that's okay. So this is it was built in 1881 by the U.S. Lighthouse Service. Uses a 4th order Fresnel lens. It still uses that original lens. So 1881 to 2021, still going strong. So the lens was like 2.5 feet tall, 20 inches in diameter, and the lens weighs about 500 pounds. So be careful. So they used to use a kerosene lamp for light because they didn't have electricity. They had a hand crank for the light keeper to use before it was automated in February 1985. And again, it's still using the same one. So it's now owned by Seattle Parks and Recreation. And if you're ever traveling at night, this is a more recent photo that I took of it. You can tell that you're looking at the West Point Lighthouse because it basically gives a flash every 5 seconds, and it alternates between red and white. So if you've ever been at Alki Beach and looking across the way, you can see that flash count 5 seconds, and then you'll see the other color. All right, so we continue around the lighthouse and we get back to the start. So I have one more thing for you. In order to make sure everyone's paying attention, I always do a pop quiz. So are you ready for this? We're paying attention. I'll give 10 seconds, and then you don't have to shout out answers. So just internally decide. So first question, what drawbridge is the most frequently opened bridge in the United States? Is it the South Park Bridge, the Fremont Bridge, or the Montlake Bridge?
Fremont.
Fremont.
And it's...
We were listening.
And of course, every time that I've told someone this, in the next day, they've always ran into the Fremont Bridge and had it start opening as they got there. So
I've never seen it open in my life.
we've all been
Not
cursed
that I go often, but
the next time you're there. All right, here's question 2. What river dried up soon after the Lake Washington Ship Canal was built? Was it the Ross River, the White River, or the Black?
Black
The
River.
black.
And you are correct. It was the Black River.
Mhm.
And what a sad story that is.
It's I'll definitely say there's a lot of history I learned about that it is sad, but it's also, you need to know it. You
Yeah.
need to know what happened, so that when they're talking about, oh well, they could have set up the reservation. Well, they got denied the reservation, and then where the reservation was, they went away. So,
Yeah,
all right. So one more.
terrible.
What does Hachuap mean? Does it mean lake people? Does it mean writing a bead? Or does it mean small lake?
Like people.
And I'll give the hint. Remember what a lot of the tribes all have in common in their names. And the answer is lake people, or people of the lake. So, yeah. So here's my contact info if you want to, like, reach out if you're looking for notes or any other ideas and stuff. And I guess, I can try to answer any questions if you have them, or at least if I don't know the answer, I can at least try and direct you towards it. Does anyone have any questions?
How long did
It was
it take you? This is,
fascinating.
I'll put my camera on. How long did it take you to put this together, Bob? Because it's really quite impressive.
Oh, thank you. Well, so this is kind of one of those everything builds on each other. So, I've been doing the history rides. When the pandemic hit and I couldn't lead rides for Cascade because, I didn't want to mess around with helping to potentially spread it by gathering people together. I moved to making YouTube videos of my history rides. So I basically have all of those notes, all of that research. And so just whenever I go and like do a new area, it just kind of adds to that. And it helps when I, like with this situation where, I've done rides around all these different little sections. And then, when I was asked to do this, I was like, hey, well, I've been to like a lot of these areas. Now it's just taking those pieces and putting them together in a different way. So it all just builds on it. I have a personal recommendation, someone who I look up to in the area. His name is David Williams. So when I first moved here, I usually like to just walk around and I just walk everywhere, bike everywhere. I'm a super nosy person. People say curious, but no, I'm just nosy. And I love finding about all that cool stuff. And so I downloaded the ebook version of his. It's like History Walks in Seattle. It's basically just has like up to like 15 different walks where I found it super engaging that it's a book that you can't sit down and read because I can't stand it reading about, oh, well, if you look down the street here, you'll see this. This is the remnant of this channelization that, and I'm like, no, I need to be standing there. So I have read his book by doing the walks, stopping, reading a little bit of, little blurb about, oh, well, the reason why this is here is because this sort of thing happened. And, I just find that kind of stuff so engaging. And so you just build it up. You build it up, and you also, there's an aspect of challenge, and this is why I love this stuff, of how do you put a route together, keep it interesting, and it's kind of like, because I'm interested in this stuff first, and I want to share it. So it just all builds up, I didn't know very much, and it all, I'm not an expert, but it helps you give you that context. But again, it just all builds up. So it's just a matter of being like, I'll use these pieces and,
Thank you. I mean, I'm a fifth generation like Scandinavian mutt from right around, Salmon Bay, and yet I don't know a lot of this history. So it's really fun to hear.
Have you been to the Nordic Museum?
Not since it was opened in its new place, which is, I'm very remiss. So It'll happen. Yeah.
All right, well, get on.
Yeah.
It's,
I know, totally. Homework, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey,
Thank
Bob,
you.
thank you. It was
Thank-
awesome presentation. And
Okay.
I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, right around the corner from you.
If I wrap your presents, happy birthday.
I lived
A
in
transplant.
Israel for about 2 years. I was over in the like West
Oh,
End.
shot you or something.
So how can we revisit this recording? I want to share with my son.
I will ask Bob if that's okay. Daryl or whoever's got background noise, could you mute if you're not speaking?
Serious. You never gave me this.
Hang on one
Why
second.
not?
Bob, I was going to ask you about that. The recording is,
Send emails and see if there's,
who is
if
it?
there
Who
was
is
ever a
that?
list of your dad.
There we go.
Just want to
Lisa. Bob, is it okay with you if we publish the recording to our membership?
Yeah, that is absolutely fine with me. And I know I'm definitely different live than I am, like even on my bike rides, I'm, a little bit more scattered brained. So I do apologize that it's 8:52.
Yeah.
7:52 when I was supposed to have been done. But
You're gonna get a confirmation code to sign.
again, as I said, I could go all night. So
Yeah, it was a long but really fascinating presentation. I wanted to say there's another book by David Williams. I'm gonna hold up to the screen. It's called Waterway, and it is the story of Seattle's locks and ship canal. It came out right after the centennial.
I haven't. I forget if I bought and downloaded that one. I haven't gotten around to reading it, but
It's excellent, and I've paddled most of the route that you covered, including really fascinating sections on the Duwamish and that little stub of the Black River, and it was really it filled in a lot of the gaps of what I knew. So thank you very much for all the detailed history of the region. I would like to suggest to our paddle club that we do much like you described, walking with the material, having a walking or bike riding tour, doing a group paddle up the Duwamish or for sections of it where people might want to stay out of the Superfund site. I've done the whole length of Duwamish all the way to the Green River in Renton. It's parts of it are gross, but it's a really interesting paddle. So that's something we might try to set up for next spring or summer. And we'd love to invite you to come with us so you can enlighten us as we make our way up or down the river. Excuse me.
Yeah, I've been all along the river just because, just biking because like the Green River Trail runs alongside it, and then the Duwamish Trail.
Mhm.
And when I was living in Tukwila, I work in downtown Seattle, so I would constantly be passing through there.
Yeah.
I would also recommend, if you want something that's a little bit more focused and again, less scatterbrained than myself, I do have my YouTube channel that I did record a couple of the history rides. So I do have one going through Tukwila. I have one that's in South Lake Washington that it hits on parts of like Rainier Beach in Seattle and then parts of Tukwila, but it's mostly centered around Renton and their history. But yeah, I mean, all this stuff, I recommend that words again. So basically with my YouTube channel, it's a free channel. So I don't monetize it. I don't make any money from that. So like, I think if it helps people kind of find routes or cool things, then it's great because I love making, I love finding out stuff and then sharing it. So I would recommend that. Or you can also reach out to me. I don't have any legible notes at the moment for this, but I can also kind of organize those and send those out. Along with, and this is what I do for my history rides, where after the ride, I will organize my notes so they're a little bit more easy to read, send out a whole bunch of links, and just send it to the whole group. So they have all this, beware, it is a rabbit hole because sites like History Link, and then MoHi and the UW and their image collections. You could be researching stuff for hours and it just does not end. So just a warning, but I will, send that kind of stuff out because I think that's good to have that on hand so you can kind of look back at things a little bit more closely, and I think also the transcript of this will help with that too. Does anyone else have any other questions or just just anything about any of the sites? I know one of the things that drives me crazy is that we'd be here for like 12 hours if I was able to put everything in that I wanted to and stop at all the cool spots. And there's so much stuff that we like just skipped over,
Yeah. That was really very, very interesting. And I'm glad you went long because that was great information. I appreciate it very much, Bob.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for letting me go long. To be honest, that is a personal thing that I have been working on with a lot of my rides where I will go long because I, get excited, I get interested in, and then I'm like, oh, sorry, people had like lunch plans for this morning ride, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I've gotten better about it, but yeah, this is I will say my first live video presentation. So again, if you want to reach out to me and kind of like give me some tips, the two words that I know that I always need are time management, but but yeah, so I really appreciate you all having me on and just kind of letting me loose to kind of share the kind of bits of info and whatnot. So, and
This is great,
Thank you.
Bob. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of history, so it's a lot to cover. So, that's a great stuff. Really good stuff, good pictures and great commentary and everything. So thank you.
oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And you gave me some great tips. I am a photographer. I love taking pictures of birds. That's my favorite thing.
Oh,
So I'm like taking notice, like, okay, water works. Where am I going?
Black River Riparian Forest and Preserve. I believe that has I think it's over 50 different species of birds that use that.
Oh, there you go.
Which one was that?
Black River Riparian Forest and Preserve. And that's in it's in Renton. And if you're there, also it's like right across the street is the Waterworks Gardens. I also strongly recommend checking that out. That's kind of like part of the whole water filtration and water treatment plant. They built this. It's a really cool like 5 area. It's like a 5. It's divided into 5 sections, and it basically you follow the water as it goes and gets filtered and treated before it goes and it flows out into the river. So
Yeah, I had that one on my list, and I was following the whole trip. I was following on the real map so that I could know where I was, because I don't know the area. I'm not new, but I haven't been out there. But so thank you. It was a great presentation.
Well, and definitely just knowing the names of the sites, that's something, if you have that, you can kind of go and like write down like, oh, okay. And then you can look up the address and yeah, again, yeah, that's a good spot. And then also the Duwamish Gardens and the Duwamish Hill Preserve, because those two are just like the Riparian Forest and Waterworks. They are also really close to each other. So if you see one, you might as well go and see the next one. And I just found them really fulfilling to check out in person. So
I'm making the plan as we speak. Just spending a photo day down there. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go because we have to get up really, really early tomorrow.
Ooh, okay.
We're going paddling as Santa Claus.
All right. Well, I guess I will jump off myself. And I have, well, one cat is passed out, and then the other cat is just like going stir crazy. So I've got I have a 14-and-a-half-year-old cat that I've had since she was 5 months old, and then I've had my other cat since he was 4 months old. And he's 1.5 years old, and he is a total pain and gets everywhere. So.
Bob, I'll email you some follow-up questions and stuff from the paddle club, okay?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and again,
Thank you.
please reach out to me if you have more questions or just want to know more about something. Yeah, all right. There you go. So, thank you all again for having
Bye,
me.
guys. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Thanks, Bob.
See you tomorrow, ladies.
See you tomorrow. See you in the morning.